Welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into an incredibly fascinating, highly unorthodox text by Lifechanyuan that outlines a totally unique philosophical and cosmological theory on the absolute essence of life. It's a text that blends spirituality, ancient mythology, and a really radical alternative cosmology into one unified framework. So let's unpack this intricate worldview step by step.
Think about it for a second. Is life merely a material, biological process? Before we even get to the origins of the universe or how the Earth was created, the author poses a provocative question that challenges our basic, everyday assumptions. Is your physical body just a shell, with true life acting more like invisible software operating within that hardware? This single concept is really the beating heart of everything we're exploring today. To navigate this dense worldview, we're going to break it down into 5 key parts. Defining life's essence, exploring this wild 1 + 1 = 1 equation, looking at how souls and bodies interact, sublimating the spirit, and finally, diving into the Creator and the actual origins of Earth.
All right, part 1, defining the essence of life.
Right off the bat, Lifechanyuan defines life as something completely formless. It is a non-material structure that inherently possesses spirituality. He's saying your physical body, whether it's human flesh or wood or stone, is just a material carrier, kind of like a house or a car you drive around in. The physical material is only considered alive when it's actively charged with this invisible spiritual structure. Without it, a body is just a corpse, and a tree is literally just a piece of wood.
It boils down to a really brilliant analogy. Think of flesh, wood, or iron as just the hardware. The non-material stuff, your spirituality, your consciousness, that's the software. And just like a computer software program needs hardware to actually execute its coding, a non-material spiritual structure needs a material carrier to express life in the physical world.
To make this abstract idea a bit more concrete, the author points to the mechanics of an old-school fax machine. When you send a fax, the original piece of physical paper stays right there with you. It doesn't travel. But these formless, invisible audio signals zap the data across cables or satellites, and boom, the exact information or the soul of that message manifests in a totally different machine across the globe. The text argues that consciousness works exactly the same way and can exist completely independently of its original physical carrier.
Taking a cue from ancient classifications by Sakyamuni, the text actually goes ahead and categorizes all life in the universe. You've got your standard biological life born from eggs and wombs, then transformations like bacteria, but it gets wilder. He includes thoughtful life with self-consciousness, and thoughtless life, which, get this, includes things like gemstones and fruitless plants. And way up at the top, neither thoughtful nor thoughtless life, which refers to highly advanced, formless entities called super-celestial beings.
Moving right along to section 2, the equation. 1 + 1 = 1.
Now here's where things get really interesting, because the author boils the entire human experience down to a math problem. 1 + 1 = 1. The idea is that one formless spiritual entity, combined with one tangible material object, equals a single life. He likens it to chemistry. Hydrogen alone is just atoms. Oxygen alone is just atoms. Mix them together, and they create something entirely new. Water. You literally need the spiritual and the material merging to create actual life.
To back up the idea that the soul is totally in the driver's seat of the material body, the text brings up an anecdote known as the dripping water experiment. The story goes that a blindfolded prisoner had his wrists lightly scratched with a dull blade, and a bucket of water was set up to slowly drip near him. He completely believed he was actively bleeding to death. As the dripping slowed down and stopped, the guy actually died. Not from blood loss. He didn't lose a single drop, but because his conventional thinking, his soul, completely believed he was dying and literally shut the physical hardware down.
Which brings us to section 3, souls, bodies, and attachments.
Okay, this next concept gets a little spooky. The text highlights a terrifying story from the SARS outbreak in China, where an animal trader severed the head of a snake. Hours later, while he was cleaning up, that entirely dead, severed snake head suddenly clamped its jaws down onto the trader's finger. Now, Lifechanyuan argues this isn't just some residual nerve reflex. He claims the creature's consciousness, its psychological activity, its soul, hadn't actually left that physical head yet, and it was out for revenge.
And the author scales this idea of lingering consciousness way up to explain all sorts of historical and natural phenomena.
You know those stories about archaeologists dying suddenly after opening Egyptian pyramids? The text says that's literally the unattached souls of pharaohs actively guarding their tombs. Or wooden houses creaking at night? That's supposedly because underpaid, mistreated carpenters attach their indignant souls to the timber. It even suggests that massive natural disasters like earthquakes and floods are the direct physical result of huge groups of angry souls seeking retribution.
To prove souls can actually weaponize the physical world, even something as fast as lightning, the text outlines a staggering timeline. In 1899, a father was struck dead by lightning in his courtyard. Exactly 30 years later, his son is killed by lightning in the exact same spot. Fast forward 20 more years to 1949, and the grandson meets the exact same fate in that same courtyard. For the author, this isn't just a terrible coincidence. It's clear-cut evidence of a spirit taking targeted revenge across 3 generations. We see another wild example of this with a cursed German car. According to the source, the soul of a heavily mistreated artisan possessed this vehicle. The history is crazy. The car was first involved in the 1914 assassination of the Austrian crown prince, which famously kicked off World War I. Then, it went on to kill a riding queen, a general commander, and several others, 18 victims in total. Its absolute rampage only stopped when it was completely blown to pieces by an Allied bomber in World War II. According to the text, this was a possessed object carrying out literal karmic retribution.
Section 4. Sublimating the spiritual entity.
So how do you actually escape all these worldly traps? The text turns to the classic Chinese novel Journey to the West. But here's the twist. It treats the story of the Monkey King not as a fun myth, but as an encrypted instruction manual. It explains that true supernatural power and a long life don't come from hitting the gym for physical strength. It comes from understanding your soul, cutting off worldly ties like family and politics entirely, and lifting your consciousness to a higher realm.
The author poses a really incredible question here. Imagine a reality where your physical weight simply drops to zero. Since the spiritual entity, the soul itself, is fundamentally weightless, the text argues that mythological abilities like riding the mist or mounting the clouds aren't fantasy at all. Once you master the soul and transcend that heavy physical hardware, the text asserts these feats are just everyday occurrences in higher dimensional spaces.
Finally, we arrive at Section 5, the Creator and Earth's origins. Now we're zooming way out to the cosmological level. The text takes a massive swing and completely rejects the scientific theory of the Big Bang. Instead, it argues that celestial bodies were intentionally designed by a supreme holographic entity known as the greatest creator. It uses this amazing baking metaphor. Black holes aren't collapsed stars. They're actually giant batches of energetic dough. And the Earth, it's just a small piece of that dough, deliberately pinched off and perfectly molded by the greatest creator for a very specific purpose. The text even provides us with a step-by-step cosmological timeline. First, the greatest creator arranges the entire solar system specifically to cater to Earth. Second, millions of angels, those super celestial beings we mentioned earlier, are dispatched to terraform the planet. Third, and this sounds straight out of a sci-fi movie, these beings mined metals right here on Earth to build the moon, placing it in orbit as a space station to control the tides. And lastly, they built massive pyramids at the bottom of our oceans to act as high-tech life laboratories.
Which leads right into this absolute bombshell of a claim. The text completely rejects linear Darwinian evolution. It argues that earthly life did not just evolve naturally over time. Instead, insects, plants, and animals were genetically designed and engineered by those super celestial beings inside those massive underwater pyramids in the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Once they were engineered, they were supposedly transported all over the globe via advanced aircraft. So in this framework, Earth is literally a manufactured, meticulously engineered paradise.
As we wrap up this explainer on Xufeng's worldview, we're left with one seriously profound mystery. If this universe was manufactured, and our physical bodies are just temporary hardware running out a mathematical equation, what actually happens when our spiritual software gets uninstalled? Does all that data just vanish? Or is it waiting to be uploaded somewhere else entirely?